morning. I'm honored that Ted asked me to share about our plans for transforming railroad investment in the United States, Canada, and Mexico. I appreciate your listening and your commitment to the rail industry and to your respective countries. We have a huge opportunity before us, the opportunity to turn railroading into a growth industry again. The rail industry is not just another arena of commercial activity. Rail transportation is the lifeblood of any well-working society that expects to thrive sustainably amidst increasing population and industrial development. Rail transportation has proven to be the most energy, capital, and space-efficient means of moving heavy weight over land. Even as we implement new solutions to global climate change, there are no technological replacements on the horizon for railroads' unique ability to move goods and people efficiently. We have, therefore, a greater responsibility than if we were gathering for a conference in other commercial arenas. Today, more than ever, we need straight talk, not happy talk. While we celebrate our successes, we must also engage in constructive observations and brainstorming for new possibilities. Yes, there is much to appreciate as railroad management successfully negotiates the ins and outs of a changing world. But our problems, a steadily shrinking rail network, increasing greenhouse gas emissions, inefficient use of space, more and more trucks to move goods to and from freight terminals, make the status quo unsustainable. So let's get straight to it by asking a vital question. Why would a nation underutilize trains and overutilize trucks? My search for that answer, and more importantly, what to do about it, has been the guiding purpose of my 25 years in transportation finance. Again, why would a society invest so much more capital in a less efficient mode of transportation? Answering this question wisely tells us everything we need to know to return railroads to a growth industry. And importantly, what might the answer point to for solving other major issues, from healthcare to climate change? We can only grow railroads if we shine an honest light on these cultural dynamics to see what has brought us to where we are. Let's make no mistake about it. We are increasingly building a truck-centric economy, even while looming congestion and air quality issues threaten our health and prosperity. This is not sustainable. It can't continue. While my firm has brought capital to rail projects in 45 states and Canadian provinces, there is no amount of money that will overcome this underlying drive toward inefficiency. What I want us to call into question, not just in the rail industry, but in our society as a whole, is the imbalance between competition and collaboration. And is that imbalance the source of many of our problems? Healthy competition and service to communities must allow for thoughtful collaboration. Can we make the transition, though, from an over-reliance on competition and antitrust to a culture of collaboration and trust? In many ways, we're still back in the days when competing track gangs would shoot at each other to be the first one to get into the pass. It was the 19th century when competition was adopted as the primary principle of interaction in business and governance, particularly in our United States and Canada. Our most successful business leaders, men like Rockefeller and Jay Cook, Charles Crocker, of course, they wanted us all to engage in competition with each other, as if we'd all be better off that way. Well, of course, they were king of the hill already. To our unending detriment, this has become not only the way of business, but the default mode for interactions between political parties, states, and countries. Competition runs rampant, not only across the aisle, but across committees, agencies, associations, and even universities. At a time when we need coordination and collaboration to solve our multifaceted problems, we are mired in competition. Competition for attention, competition for influence, competition for votes, and competition for funding. We are all rendered less effective as the interactions that require collaboration are overwhelmed by endless competition. This will not do. Now, how has this turned out for the rail industry in North America? Yes, we have one of the most robust and safe freight rail industries in the world. And in the three countries of Canada, the United States, and Mexico, railroading is about a $95 billion a year industry. But trucking in those three countries is a $950 billion a year industry. No matter what measures we apply, something is amiss. We ask again, why would a society invest so much capital and resources in a less efficient mode of freight transportation? So I started thinking about these issues in 1995. I was soon after introduced to a short-line railroad, the Mass Centrals, our first railroad client. They needed to finance 3 used boxcars that they were buying from CN. They couldn't find any bank or lender that was interested. So after solving that finance challenge, of bringing a lender from outside the railroad industry that we related the outstanding resale value and scrap value of these boxcars, I asked Bob Bentley, the general manager, are there other businesses like you around the country? Oh, yeah, sure. Matter of fact, since deregulation in 1980, it's gone from 190 short lines to 600 short lines. I said, do they have a challenge accessing capital for growth? Oh, yes. It's the bane of our existence. Well, I started then on a 25-year investigation of what happened. How did we go from the 19th century, when railroads were the reason that capital flowed into North America, to the end of the 20th century, when we were needed to solve some of the railroad's finance challenges? My company has been filling that funding gap for railroads and bridging that gap in understanding ever since. Now, after discovering that the rail industry was misunderstood on the finance side, we became curious what was going on in the industry's relationship with government. That curiosity has led us to conduct thousands of meetings with local and state government, Congress, and the executive branch. In one 4-year period from 1996 to 2000, we met with 68 U.S. Senate offices and 175 House offices. Rather than advocating on behalf of a particular client or a particular project, we have built a trusted advisory relationship by speaking to the value of railroads to our country. It's all about education and enrollment in what we all know to be true about our industry. Investing in railroads right now is the smartest choice we can make, really across the world. environmentally, socially, and financially. But we all know that North American railroads, governments, and communities have had a love-hate relationship for 180 years. It is time for us as an industry to chart a new course, a system-wide growth business model, but not just on return on investment and operating ratio, but a growth plan that truly serves our country. Intermodalism, as it presently exists, is moving us farther and farther from transportation efficiency. Advocates for expanding the network of large intermodal container facilities are silent on the increasing use of trucks where we can least afford them, on local roads of small towns and large metropolitan regions that are increasingly suffering from congestion and air pollution. Pennsylvania, my state, has become a hotbed of warehouse and distribution facilities that are built not only truck out to cover the Baltimore to Boston market, but alarmingly truck in, forcing more and more truck traffic on our crowded highways and local roads. So even those goods that are carried long haul by the railroads are unloaded in the midst of large intermodal terminals in small town America, instead of being delivered directly to the customer. Here's how that looks for just one logistics move. There's a Pepsi bottling plant in the industrial bowels of Brooklyn. They receive 30 tractor trailers of liquid sugars a day. Now that same company owns 4 other Pepsi bottling plants on the East Coast. Same dynamics. There's a 4-track New York and Atlantic rail line right alongside that facility. For $1 million, the unloading equipment and pumping gear could be installed with a 1-year payback on the savings to move those liquid sugars all the way from the Midwest to Brooklyn by rail. Instead, it's transloaded in North Jersey and eastern Pennsylvania, put on the tractor trailers to move over the highways, the bridges, and the tunnels, and the local roads to get to Brooklyn. Now, solving that matter would take a collaborative effort between the suppliers, and the distributors, and the customer, and the railroads. That's the kind of collaboration we're woefully short of. So there's 30 tractor trailers a day. And there's a reason why in the New York metropolitan area, 5% of the freight traffic moves by rail. The rest moves by truck. In our work with leading short line operators, we have experienced the tremendous possibilities of local rail development. Rail leaders like Dan Sabin, Dave Fellon, Rick Webb, Al Felix, these leaders and others, including maybe some of you here today, buck the odds to revitalize deteriorated portions of our rail network and turn them into contributors to regional economies. We have to ask, if these rail entrepreneurs can turn a profit serving the community and Class 1 railroads, what does that say about the decisions that let these lines go fallow in the first place? The growth of railroading requires more than high-volume customers and corridors. Projects of national significance require many projects of local significance. Strategic Rail Finance is currently advising on new startup shortline operations in 5 states, with 2 more in the pipeline. This process can be scaled up across the country. With environmental degradation and transportation congestion looming as quite serious social issues, our communities and businesses need more rail service, not less. This brings us to the fundamental question of our time. Another fundamental question. What is the responsibility of business people to contribute to society? Well, let's just answer that question straight out. The primary responsibility of business people is to contribute to the common good. That needs to live at the heart of all commercial activity in the 21st century. If we are not continually evolving how our businesses contribute to a sustainable future, then we have the responsibility to find a business or organization that is and go work for them. It's that simple. We no longer have time to argue about economic or political theory while the planet heats up, while the oceans rise, and while our infrastructure ages. This is a time for real heroes. The kind of women and men that our grandchildren can reminisce with pride over what we did for our world. I'm speaking to those of you in the room as well as those in the field and in managerial offices throughout North America. What exactly does it mean to be a real-life hero? The children around us want us to be in our companies and organizations. They would say, please, Mom and Dad, please, Aunt and Uncle, Grandma and Grandpa, please put our family's interests just enough to the side so that you can think and act and consider what is in the best interest of the world. In other words, shift from profiting for profit's sake to profiting from contribution. Now, I'll share one of my early eye-opening experiences in DC, 1995 or 6. I hadn't really been in DC in my life, except as a tourist. It was 1996, and as a result of a 5-year presidential Blue Ribbon Commission, legislation was introduced to establish a mechanism for private sector pension funds to be invested in infrastructure projects, a major national endeavor. We used to have Blue Ribbon Commissions. We've had one for quite some time. I read the legislation, and it had every type of infrastructure project described: schools, water, and sewer. It had passenger rail. It didn't have freight rail. That's a curious omission. So we reached out to Congresswoman Rosa DeLauri's legislative director, and he directed us to the executive director of the commission that produced this 5-year bit of work. So I called him up. It wasn't more than 10 minutes that he explained what his motivation was for serving in that position. He worked for a Washington law firm, lobbying firm. He had as a contract with a French manufacturer of turbine engines and wanted to see TGV, passenger rail, instituted in the United States. He didn't have much of an interest in freight rail. I got off the phone, and one, it was great news because I could see that there really was no inherent reason why freight rail wasn't included. But I was struck by, he told me as if it's matter of fact that his work on this important piece of legislation was driven by a private sector contract that he had. And it gave me such a window into, is that what drives policy? Is that how lobbyists inform or not inform what our government puts forward? Well, in the 106th Congress, there were 2 words added to this legislation: and freight. All we did was make the calls, investigate, draft a letter for the Congresswoman to send to USDOT. No one had a problem with freight rail being included. We didn't represent any votes. We didn't represent any campaign contributions. It showed me that when you speak about railroads clearly, compellingly, you can have influence in the milieu that everyone thinks you have to have money or votes to make a difference. railroad industry representatives can imbue their attention and their communications with a higher purpose. There is no reason to shy away from talking passionately about railroad's contribution to vibrant communities and the environment. Simon Sinek delivered one of the most respected TED Talks of all time when he delineated the approach of successful companies like Apple. He related the power of communicating why you do business, then how, and then what you offer, rather than the other way around. The rail industry does itself a disservice when it leads with what it does and hardly ever gets to the why. The power of railroads to a well-working society is left out or barely mentioned as an afterthought. But why? We have found over and over again that rail transportation, when communicated proudly, opens doors and minds of people and communities and government. Imagine this. We held a rail industry educational briefing for 60 congressional transportation staff. Went on for 90 minutes. Not one person left early. Later, we convened 30 industry and government leaders in a 6-hour dialogue, again in the U.S. Capitol building, not in the Washington Marriott, not in the Hilton, right in our U.S. Capitol building, twice we convened. No money exchanged hands to produce that result. We can deliver cascading benefits to our nations and our environment by masterminding a continental build-out of our rail network. That requires convening government, industry, and communities such that we capture the imagination and input of all stakeholders. The railroads and its shippers, and the community and its government stewards can align. Getting the use of the wheelwright by transforming the driving forces behind wasteful, vested interest competition will allow us to create breakthrough approaches in all of the important matters that railroads impact: land use, energy, the environment, natural resources, industrial development, and finance. Railroads are critical to sustainability in all of these concerns. Now, fortunately, all the capital for this build-out is already available. In the last 6 months, we've met with 9 of the 20 largest infrastructure fund managers in the world, poised to invest $500 million, $6 billion, $600 billion in North American railroads, and can't. 3 things are needed. If you think they want to, well, not if you think that, what they end up investing in, is another toll road, or a bridge, or a sewer system, not railroads. 3 things are needed to reset the landscape for profitable deployment of this ample private sector capital. An industry-wide growth business model and plan, supportive and stable public policy for rail development, and an environmentally intelligent relationship with communities. Capital will flow in record amounts into North American railroads from around the world when we align all stakeholders around a continental growth plan. Now, I don't talk about these matters without walking the walk. Here are some of the things that we are doing. We have co-founded the North American Freight Forum, along with Daniel Elliott, former chair of the Surface Transportation Board under Presidents Obama and Trump. The North American Freight Forum is an innovation and multi-stakeholder interaction for addressing the most important issues in freight transportation and for creating smart public policy. The thing that I saw in all of my meetings and investigation of what goes into public policy policy is that we have adjudicatory and regulatory bodies. We have courts, we have the STB, we have the FRA. We don't have the forum and venue for actually thinking together, for collaborating, for bringing forward new ideas. Even when the STB forms a Rail Shipper Transportation Advisory Council or an Energy Transportation Advisory Council, it just succumbs to typical, meet every 2 or 3 years and put out a white paper. There's not actually progress being made. So we're solving that by creating the North American Freight Forum. We've begun our work in the state of Nevada on a rail action plan that will serve as a model for state rail planning throughout the country. That's a contract with the Nevada DOT and the governor's office to bring a new level of collaboration between development, transportation providers, government, and communities. In collaboration with Mike Koontz, the longtime former head of the US DOT Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Improvement Program, we've built out a greatly expanded set of life cycle benefits and costs with which to measure and plan transportation projects, and once and for all give the country a full, true accounting of what we get when we invest in roads to move freight, and what we get when we invest in railroads to move freight. Not just the initial costs, but throughout the whole life cycle of that infrastructure. Now, Strategic Rail Finance continues to create capitalization strategies for major rail infrastructure projects, as well as smart ways to expand local rail service for shippers and communities. We currently advise 19 North American ports, cities, and economic development agencies on rail infrastructure development. From all of my experience meeting with so many folks, I can report that we are not short of intelligence. What we are lacking are the means for gathering that intelligence into smart policies and programs. Intelligent whole systems thinking is common sense. There is nothing more timely right now than common sense. That is why we have invented our teleconference methodology for online and in-person facilitated large group, multi-stakeholder dialogue, thinking, and action. The North American Freight Forum utilizes this teleconference system. Now, people like you are smart, committed, and passionate. We can think together. Let's get to it. Now is the time. You are the heroes. Let's grow railroads, and let's create a sustainable world that works for everyone.